right, welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and guest. I'm that other dude, Andrew, and as always, I'm joined by Heather.
Hello.
And today we are talking about a group from Washington, D.C. originally, although I think now they are in Los Angeles. It's a group called Dead Meadow, who have been around over the last 25 years. Um, and they are primarily a psychedelic stoner band. But since you have mentioned a bunch of really cool psychedelic space rock influenced band, I thought, why not go back to people who I guess they're thought of as originators of the sound and godfathers of the genre. So I thought, why not shed some light on them?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think they are relatively a big band, but they still recreate in the underground. So even though they probably have a lot of people who've heard their music, I still think more people should hear their music.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do
The
you know,
I saw that they formed in 1998 in the Washington D.C. area, and they have 8 studio albums and some live albums. Their most recent album was Force Form Free as part of the Blues Funeral Recording Post Wax collection. I listened to their albums Old Growth, Feathers, Dead Meadow, and Force Form Free. Seems like they have a very dedicated underground following, and I can certainly see why. Known as pioneers of the modern psychedelic rock, their music is mellow and trippy and fuzzy. It floats along with a dreamlike quality. And I thought the vocals were also really soothing. And I think it's great when bands come along and literally change music in such a positive way. I think it's quite an honor to be labeled as a pioneer. I can only think of a few modern bands in the underground stoner music scene that have been labeled as pioneers. Some have even made their own genres of music. I really admire the ingenuity and to be able to listen to that masterful execution. It's a real joy. And to be such an influence on the scene and other bands, I think is really admirable. And I was saddened to hear of the passing of their bassist, Steve, and I wanted to offer my condolences to the band and also to Steve's loved ones.
yeah, I would echo those sentiments as well. Um, I think I had because I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm a little bit more familiar with the um, the scene in DC and Virginia. I think I had heard of them. Um, I think originally because the guitarist and singer Jason Simon is the nephew of David Simon, who wrote the book and then did the TV show Homicide and later The Wire. And I think some of Dead Meadow's music was featured on The Wire. Um, so I think that was my first introduction. And then on the album Feathers, the second track is called Such Hawks, Such Sounds. And I think that's where there's a documentary on YouTube that I saw about the stoner metal scene. And I think that's where they took the title of the documentary because it's also called Such Hawks, Such Sounds. That's difficult to say. Um,
Yeah.
but so I think that was my first introduction was sort of through um, just kind of hearing about them uh, and then realizing, oh yeah, I should probably listen to them because they are responsible for such a deep cut of this genre. Um, and then yeah, I started listening to their first album that's just self-titled, and then recently I listened to the most recent release, Force Form One, I think it's called, and then Feathers. because you and I had discussed listening to Feathers. So, but yeah, it's really I feel like sometimes I'm not I don't usually do any psychedelics. Um, I really haven't ever. Uh, but I feel like sometimes when you listen to the music, it will give you that journey sonically. And I think this band really, I feel like when I listen to their music, I'm laying down in a boat in the water, and the current and the waves are just gently taking me along, and I don't have any destination to be. I have no obligations. It's like, I think soothing was such a great description of the music. It really is soothing. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you're looking for people to show you how to do this correctly, like this type of music, then Dead Meadow is a great place to start. Um, they really know what they're doing, and they do it well. Um, so I would say pick any of their albums. You can't really go wrong. Um, and yeah, it's funny because like I think uh, they also their first record I think came out on Tolada Records, which was the bassist of Fugazi had his own label because Fugazi is a Washington D.C. band. So I think their bass player was putting out harder, he had his own label and he was putting out music from the scene. So it's just cool how all this stuff is kind of interconnected. Um, but yeah, I could just throw on any of their albums and not skip any tracks, not hit the forward button, and just rock out and just
Yeah.
let it wash all over you.
Yeah. And I think I heard a long time ago, I think I heard their, um, not when it was released, but later on down the road. I think I heard their self titled album a while ago. And I didn't really start getting into psychedelic music, like music that's more on the psychedelic side, until more recently. Because I started out listening to just like straight up stoner rock. And then, it kind of developed from there. I listened to stoner rock for years and then kind of started branching out into other, you know, types of stoner rock, and like the psychedelic type of stoner rock. I don't think I started really listening to until a few years ago. And it's just kind of cool to learn how much influence that they've had on the scene, and especially with the more modern, like the bands that I currently listen to that are more on the psychedelic side. It's just really cool to see how it's come along in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I mean that was my whole hope of having them be a band that we discuss was I sort of figured we've listened to so much psychedelic music in the past, we should
Yeah,
see where some of it was influenced.
yeah. And my favorite band is a heavy psych band
Yeah. Well,
now.
the I found a good description. I forgot where this was from, but for those unfamiliar, Dead Meadow formed nearly 3 decades ago in the Washington, D.C. area and made a splash with their trippy, jammy blend of stoner rock and metal flavors. While they never reached the level of fame that other stoner rock bands have attained over the years, they still have a rabid underground following of fans who love their heavy, jammy music, and they seem just as home in a small, grimy venue as on a massive stage. So I thought that, and then somebody described their album Force Form Free, which came out in 22, as this record is perfect for the morning, spelled Morning, and morning, Mourning. So I thought that was, if you're feeling great and it's a bright sunny day like it was for me today when I put on the album, it was delightful just to walk around and listen to it. But if you're also having a rough day, I could see putting this on and it helping you sort of navigate through murkier waters.
Yeah, yeah. And not a lot of music can do that.
No, and it's what's cool too is to go back through their albums, and while there is definitely a sound that they have, it was interesting to see how they incorporated other nuances. Some psychedelic music that we listen to, I feel they found what works and they will just stick with that. Um, but this one I felt like you could listen to each song and it was unique, but it did have their flair. Like you knew it was a Dead Meadow song.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like they've kind of, there's some blues in there and some, folk in there and some, stoner rock in there and some influence. You can definitely hear like the influence from the 60s and the 70s that's in there, but yet it's the way that it's done is like in a more modern way.
Sure. Yeah, it feels like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
one day it'll be interesting. I mean, if I ever actually try psychedelics, it will be interesting to see if any of this music is, it adds up to what I think a psychedelic trip. I mean, whether or not you can compare the experience to what you think a sonic experience would be, but
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. Again,
Yeah.
my tolerance is really low, so who
Yeah.
know, who knows?
Yeah.
But but yeah, I would check out Dead. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Um, I'm not sure what their plans are. I think they had been a trio for a while, um, and there's a video that I remember watching of them playing live, and I don't think it was the most recent drummer, um, but he played. He had a very interesting way of playing, where it was like his hands were like this, and he would do it like that. Like it wasn't, you weren't his elbows weren't bent. His elbows were up like this, and I mean, it was incredible because he kept really good time. I mean, he was a great drummer. It's just his style was so unorthodox. And I just tried to find the video. I went spelunking down the YouTube rabbit hole and I couldn't find anything. So I'm pretty sure that it actually exists, and I'm not making this up. But yeah, I don't remember which drummer it was, but there is to my recollection a video of Dead Meadow playing live, and I remember the comments were like discussing his technique, but people defending his ability to play.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, it's always cool to find like you and I typically find bands that don't have as big of a following, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, every so often we'll touch on a band that's got, but like it's rare that we discuss a band that has, been around for almost 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
that has been so influential.
sure.
And I never really realized because when I hear a band that I like, I typically go on Bandcamp and I typically, follow them so that way I can be notified when new music comes out from them. And I guess I didn't realize until just recently how many how many bands I actually follow on Bandcamp that are more on the psychedelic side and
Sure.
more. So I guess I have really leaned more towards that style of music. Uh, you know.
Yeah, well, I think there's something really soothing, as many times as it's cool to throw on a more dissonant and harsher album that you can really vent to.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's just you just need that trippy psychedelic music to unwind.
yeah, yeah,
So
Yeah, it's definitely both kinds of music definitely serve their purpose.
Sure. That reminds me of the Blues Brothers, where she says, "We play both kinds of music, country and western.
Yeah.
We play both kinds of music here, stoner and psychedelic."
Yep.
So, well, yeah, I've been, not that I've been listening to them for a long time now, but there's still albums of theirs that I need to go back and check out. Um, and it was fun. It was interesting because some of the music from Force Form Free reminded me of some of Slow Draw's latest album. Um, because they both sort of dabble in that same psychedelic, relaxing realm. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it would
I
be
mean,
interesting to talk to Mark and see
if he's
uh,
a fan.
if he's a fan of Dead Meadow. I'm sure he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And more just a little bit more of the experimental type
Hmm. Sure,
music also,
sure,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you dug it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That was a cool recommendation from you.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
trying to, as fun as it is for me to go down the YouTube rabbit hole and find a new band that just, I either get hooked because of the name or the album artwork. I feel like I want to vary my approach a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to find, you know, more established bands that have been around for a little while, perhaps. Sometimes bands that have broken up, but they've made good records.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm hoping to have some more surprises for you in the next couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm excited.
yes, me too, and I'm
Sounds
excited. I'm excited for next week.
And it's funny because we talked about music that's really soothing and then music that, is harder. And it's so funny because I just put a band on our calendar that is super heavy.
Nice.
And it's just like sometimes you're just in the mood for music that's really heavy,
Yeah. Sometimes,
and that
sometimes it calls for it.
sometimes, yeah. And then, most of the time it's, nice music like this. And then sometimes,
Oh, it's funny. So before Heather and I started doing this show, I had a podcast called A Fistful of Faceful, um, which started out where I would try to encourage my friend Martin, who was a very meek British fellow, to listen to heavy metal music. And then when he and I no longer did the show together, I would have a revolving door of guests whom I'd try to convince to listen to hard music. Um, and someone who would sometimes make a guest appearance was my mom. So, because I'm currently helping to take care of her right now, she and I were on the front porch today, and I was playing Feathers by Dead Meadow. And I said, Heather and I are going to be talking about this album later. So let's revisit some old times, and we can. So we were sitting out on the porch listening to Dead Meadow. It was really cool because we
that is
were
cool.
we were in nature. I didn't get a chance to ask her what she thought, but she didn't encourage me to turn it off, which I'll take as a win.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so next week the ball is back in your court. I'm
Yes.
excited to see what you have to bring. Your batting average is incomprehensible.
Oh,
So
thank you.
um, cool. Well, yeah, everyone go check out Dead Meadow, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.